I never thought I'd be the man sitting here, heart in pieces, telling the world how my own flesh and blood, my son, betrayed me. For decades, I poured my soul into building a company from scratch, working late nights, missing birthdays, sacrificing moments with my family because I believed I was doing it for them, for him. But nothing prepares you for the gut punch when you find out the person you trusted most sold everything you built behind your back. I remember the day I found out. It wasn't just a business deal. It was the collapse of a lifetime's work, a shattering of dreams, and worst of all, the loss of a bond I thought was unbreakable. People think being a millionaire means you're untouchable, that you have everything. But no amount of money shields you from heartbreak. No fortune can protect you from the deep, hollow ache when you realize your own child has turned away from you. It's the kind of pain that makes you question everything. Was I too focused on success? Did I fail as a father? Could I have saved our relationship before it came to this? I'm not telling this story for sympathy. I'm telling it because maybe someone out there needs to hear that no matter how much you achieve, no matter how big you build, the most fragile thing you'll ever hold is your family. If you've ever faced betrayal, heartbreak, or loss, or if you simply want to understand the raw, messy truths behind the headlines, please like this video, share your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe to the channel. I'm opening my heart here, hoping my testimony can touch even one person who feels alone in their pain. You're not alone. Let's walk through this together. I woke up with that sharp, metallic taste of dread on my tongue, the kind you can't brush away no matter how hard you scrub. Something was wrong. The sun outside split the curtains with a vengeance, too bright, too sharp, like it knew I was about to be cut open. My assistant's voice, tight and too cheerful, called from the hall. "Sir, you should see this." The papers trembled in her hands, but it was my grip that failed. My name, in bold, black print. Secret deal. Son sells family empire overnight. My son, my flesh and blood, the boy I raised. My heart jolted like it wanted to escape, banging against my ribs. The coffee in my hand, black, scalding, comforting, slipped and hit the floor, shattering into a million jagged edges. I stared at the spill spreading like a wound. The first feeling wasn't anger. No, it was confusion, the kind that burrows under your skin and gnaws. Why? Why would he do this to me? To us? I sat down, palms cold, as memories hit me in waves. His 7th birthday, the one I missed because I was closing the London deal. The school play, where I arrived halfway through, still on a conference call. The countless weekends I promised I'd make up to him. I dialed his number. Once, twice, 3 times. Straight to voicemail. I imagined him staring at his phone, watching my name flash on the screen, thumb hovering over the decline button, and pressing it. I stormed into the boardroom, where men and women I'd trusted for decades looked back at me with hollow, professional eyes, their faces blurred into masks of polite indifference. "It's legal," one said softly. "He has the shares." Legal, as if legality could patch the hole tearing through my chest. Back in my office, the window framed the skyline I had built my life on. The buildings glittered like trophies under the dying sun, meaningless now. My reflection in the glass was a stranger. The sharp suit, the silver hair, the hard lines of my face. I had won every game except the one that mattered. That night, I didn't turn on the lights. I sat in the dark, the walls pressing in, whispering accusations I couldn't silence. Where did I go wrong? Was it in the early years when I told myself there'd be time later? Or was it more recent, when he asked for more responsibility and I, fearing mistakes, kept him on the sidelines? I traced the rim of the broken mug, cutting my finger on one of the sharp pieces. The sting was satisfying, a clean, simple pain compared to the mess inside my head. I imagined him, somewhere out there, celebrating his victory. Did he hate me? Did he pity me? Sleep never came. I sat by the window until dawn, watching the city wake up, feeling like the only man left behind. The phone sat beside me, silent. No apology, no explanation, just the echo of my own breath and the heavy knowledge that my life had cracked open, and I had no idea how to put it back together. I remember the first time I held him. The hospital room was cold, too white, too sterile, but his skin was warm, impossibly soft, flushed red like he'd been peeled straight from the heart of something sacred. His tiny hand curled around my finger, clinging like he understood that this was his anchor, his first bond in a world too big, too loud. And I thought, in that moment, I will never let this go. But somewhere along the way, I did. I missed his first soccer game. I was halfway across the world, ink still drying on a contract I'd fought months for, convincing myself this was the price of love, of providing. His mother told me later how he stood on the field after the game, eyes scanning the stands long after the crowds had thinned, asking if Dad was coming. And when she said no, he'd quietly turned away, fighting back tears. I was blind to it, wrapped in the comfort and lies we tell ourselves. I'm doing this for him, for us. One day he'll understand. But was I really building a future, or just stacking bricks between us, wall after wall? I was there at dinner tables, yes, physically, my body in the chair, my fork in hand, but my mind always elsewhere. Phone buzzing beside the plate, eyes flicking to emails, strategy notes, the next pitch. Conversations skim the surface. How was school? Fine. Good. Then back to silence. The weight of everything unsaid pressing between us. His teenage years. I see them now like a blur of closed doors and quiet fury. Silent dinners, headphones on. I thought, he's moody, he'll grow out of it. I miss the signs, the late nights when I heard him pacing, the lingering looks when I promised I'd make it to his events and didn't. I wasn't just absent, I was unreachable. I became the man on the other side of the glass, always busy, always important, but never truly there. Did he see me as a hero? Or was I a ghost, haunting the edges of his life, a figure he couldn't touch no matter how hard he tried? The night before the betrayal, we sat together, a rare evening. We actually laughed over drinks, sharing old memories, loosening the knot between us, or so I thought. I let myself believe. Maybe we're healing. Maybe this was a turning point, but now I wonder. Was that night a goodbye in disguise? Had he already made his choice, already signed the papers, already decided the course of betrayal? Was he laughing with me while knowing he'd tear the ground out from under my feet? The truth is, I don't know. And maybe that's the most haunting part, that I missed the moment he stopped seeing me as his father and started seeing me as the obstacle in his way. What about you? Have you ever realized too late that you were becoming a ghost in someone's life? The confrontation happened in a place that should have been neutral. A quiet cafe tucked into the corner of the city where neither of us had history. I had chosen it carefully, thinking maybe the lack of familiar ground would soften the edges between us. He arrived late, of course. My son, tall, sharp-jawed, dressed in that casual, effortless way that made me feel old just looking at him. His eyes flicked over me, cool, detached, as if I were a stranger he'd agreed to meet out of politeness. I opened my mouth, but the words tumbled out jagged, my voice unsteady. "Why?" I asked, barely recognizing the thin thread of desperation in my own tone. "Why would you do this to me?" He exhaled, a small, tired breath, and for a split second I thought I saw a flicker of regret. But no. His face hardened. His eyes I used to know, went cold. "You cared more about the company than you ever cared about me." The words hit with such brutal precision I felt the wind knock out of me. I actually swayed, gripping the edge of the table. He didn't flinch. He just watched me absorb it, like he'd been waiting years to say it. I wanted to protest, to remind him of the countless sacrifices I'd made, the long nights, the endless deals I chased not for myself, but for us. But as I opened my mouth, I realized how hollow it would sound. Because to him, it was never about what I provided. It was about what I withheld. He leaned back, arms crossed, voice low. "I needed to get free. Free of the shadow, the control, the legacy. You built a prison, Dad, and you locked me in it." I sat there, stunned, as he unfolded the story like a confession. How he'd been planning it for months, quietly assembling allies, people from my own inner circle, advisors I trusted like family, who had become his informants. They had fed him details, contacts, loopholes. While I sat at my desk, thinking I was steering the ship, they had been drilling holes beneath the waterline. I realized then, it wasn't just a sale. It wasn't a business move. It was a rebellion, a severing. He didn't just want the company gone. He wanted me gone. For the first time, I felt the sharp edge of mortality, not in the sense of death, but of obsolescence. I was watching my own funeral, attending the eulogy of a father I never thought I'd become, sitting across from the son I had lost while he was still breathing. As I walked away from that cafe, the streetlights blurry through unshed tears, I asked myself over and over, have I truly lost my son forever? Have you ever reached out for someone you loved, only to realize they had already let go? It's strange how fast a reputation can rot. One day, you're the titan of industry, the man who built an empire with his bare hands. The next, you're nothing more than a cautionary headline. I watched it happen in real time. Father or tyrant, the truth behind the sale. My name, once synonymous with success, now smeared across tabloids like something toxic, something shameful. Friends I thought were ironclad, the old golf buddies, the partners who'd toasted my every deal, began fading. Calls went unanswered, texts ignored, invitations quietly rescinded. They didn't want the stain of my scandal near them, didn't want to pick a side or get tangled in the fallout. I was radioactive, and they scattered. Even my ex-wife called. Her voice, soft, familiar, but now lined with something bitter, something like pity, threaded through the phone line. "I'm sorry you're going through this," she murmured, but her words scraped raw. She wasn't sorry for me. She was sorry about me. Sorry I'd become the man everyone whispered about, the father who drove his own son to betrayal. The house, once so full of energy, was suffocating now. Every room was a graveyard. I could almost hear the echo of his boyish laughter bouncing off the walls. little ghosts of a past I hadn't appreciated when I had it. I walked the halls like a stranger, touching picture frames, running my fingers over dust I hadn't noticed before. Sleep became a stranger. I'd lie awake, eyes open, staring at the ceiling until dawn. My mind was a cruel archivist, pulling out every harsh word I'd thrown at him over the years, every disappointment, every sharp command, every moment I chose business over bedtime stories or Sunday morning pancakes. The weight of it crushed me. I drank to silence the reel playing in my head. Whiskey, vodka, whatever was close enough to grab. At first, just a glass or two, but then the glasses multiplied, filling the night with blurry edges and the false warmth of numbness. But alcohol doesn't erase memories. It amplifies them. I dug out old home videos, the kind we hadn't watched in years. There he was, on the screen, a little boy with my eyes and his mother's smile, holding up a crayon drawn, beaming with pride. I watched that moment over and over, searching, desperate, trying to pinpoint when it all fractured. Was it when he was 6, 10, 15? Was there a day when he stopped seeing me as his father and started seeing me as competition? And there, alone in the flicker of the television, something inside me cracked. For the first time in decades, I let myself cry. Not the tight, controlled tears I'd sometimes allowed after a funeral or a bad loss, but full, gut-wrenching sobs, the kind that left you gasping, heaving, a man unmade. Have you ever sat in the dark, drowning in your own failures, wondering if there's any piece of yourself left worth saving? The mirror doesn't lie, or maybe it does, just enough to keep you standing. I stood there, staring at myself, not the polished titan I always saw before board meetings, not the man whose name appeared in Forbes or on plaques, but a stranger. The kind of man whose eyes sagged under the weight of things left unsaid, whose mouth seemed forever halfway between a scowl and a plea. My hands gripped the edge of the marble sink, cold, solid, more solid than I felt inside. I stared into the reflection, trying to remember when I'd last hugged my son. It was at his college graduation, a day that should have been a father's proudest. I remembered clapping him on the back, feeling the awkward tension between us even then, mistaking it for the simple stiffness of adulthood. Back then, I thought he admired me. I thought I was the man he wanted to become. But now, looking back, I wondered if all I saw was my own desperate need to matter, to him. The reflection in the mirror seemed to twist, its mouth curling into something mocking. "You didn't just lose the company," it whispered. "You lost yourself." Without the company, without the empire I'd spent my life clawing into existence, who was I? I wasn't the father on the sidelines of soccer games or the man helping with math homework. I was the figure looming in the background, always on a call, always running late, always buying forgiveness with toys, trips, and scholarships. Was that all I'd ever been? I tried to fight off the rising panic, the way it bubbled up in my chest like a scream that couldn't find its way out. So I did what I hadn't done in decades. I sat down and wrote. At first, it was just a journal. Notes, fragments, angry scribbles on yellowed paper. But soon, the words sharpened into something else. Letters. Letters I never planned to send, but letters where I confessed the things I was too proud to say out loud. I should have been there more. I thought I was doing this for you, but maybe it was just for me. I'm scared you'll never forgive me. Each sentence felt like peeling off a layer of skin, exposing raw nerves underneath. I found myself wondering, again and again, If a father can truly make amends when the damage has already been done, can years of absence, silence, or control be undone by a few honest words? Or is that just another selfish hope, another illusion to keep me from facing the emptiness I created? Sometimes at night I would imagine him reading these letters. Would his eyes soften? Would his jaw clench? Would he laugh bitterly at the man who only learned how to love after losing everything? The questions gnawed at me, restless and sharp. And in the mirror, I watched myself unravel. Tell me, do you believe it's ever too late to repair a broken bond? The papers came in thick, suffocating stacks. My lawyer, a quiet man with pinched features, laid them across the table like the slow, deliberate pulling back of skin. I skimmed line after line, feeling each word slice deeper. Hidden clauses, secret amendments, silent partners, all signed, authorized, but not by me. My signature wasn't there. My son's was. Every single time. I felt bile rise in my throat, my chest tightened, not with surprise but with the crushing weight of confirmation. This hadn't been an impulsive betrayal. It was a long, meticulous orchestration, years in the making. My lawyer looked at me with the careful pity you reserve for the terminally ill. He positioned himself quietly, Mr. Davenport. This wasn't a coup overnight. It was calculated. His words hung heavy, thick with implication. My son hadn't stumbled into this. He had designed it. The room seemed to tilt, the edges curling inward. I gripped the armrest, knuckles white, breath shallow. Was he always waiting? Was every father-son dinner, every casual conversation, every holiday toast just a thread in the web he was spinning? Memory, that cruel, unreliable monster, dragged me backward. I saw him as a teenager, knocking on my office door late at night, asking if he could help, if he could learn. I saw myself waving him off. Not now, son, not yet. I told myself I was protecting him, shielding him from the brutal world of business until he was ready. But maybe, just maybe, I'd been pushing him away. The thought curled in my gut, a slow, poisonous twist. Had I created this? Not by action, but by absence? Had my silence, my dismissal, driven him to take what I never gave? And yet, beneath the guilt, a darker feeling throbbed. Rage. Not the clean, righteous anger of betrayal, but the bitter, gnawing fury of a man who has been outplayed. I slammed the paper shut, my pulse hammering in my ears. I tried to summon the image of the boy I had raised, the toddler who clung to my leg, the teenager who shadowed me at company events, the young man who once looked up to me like I hung the moon. But all I saw now was the man across the chessboard. Cold, calculating, patient. A strategist. Had I handed him the tools for this? Had I raised him not to love, but to conquer? Power, ambition, ruthlessness? Had these been my legacy all along, or was this simply who he was destined to become, with or without my influence? The questions circled like vultures and no answer offered peace. I stared at the city lights flickering through the window, realizing with a fresh ache that I was no longer the king here. I was just another relic displaced by the next generation. Do you ever wonder if the very things you built to protect your family are the things that ultimately destroyed it? I started pulling back from the world the way a wounded animal crawls into the shadows to bleed in peace. Calls went unanswered. Messages piled up like bodies on a battlefield. Even the house, this cavernous shrine I had once called home, seemed to shrink away from me. its walls colder, its rooms vaster, as if recoiling from the man I had become. I could hear it in the creaks of the floorboards at night, in the whispering drafts that slipped under the doors. This house knew. It knew the guilt I carried like a stone in my gut. It knew the shame I couldn't scrub off no matter how many times I sat in the shower, steam burning my skin, hoping to melt myself down to bone and start over. Old friends reached out. They always do when the headlines turn bloody, voices from the past slipping into my voicemail with forced warmth. "Hey man, I just wanted to check on you." But their words were brittle, like glass ornaments, decorative, useless, and bound to shatter if you touch them too hard. I deleted the messages without listening all the way through. I started talking to the door of my son's old bedroom, whispering to it, apologizing to no one. The first time I caught myself doing it, I laughed, sharp, bitter, jagged. But the second time, it didn't feel strange. It felt necessary. His room still smelled faintly of the cologne I'd bought him for his high school graduation. Still had the old posters curling at the edges, the trophies collecting dust. It was like a mausoleum for a boy who wasn't dead, but who was gone all the same. Memories twisted themselves into hauntings. I'd be walking down the hall and swear I heard his teenage voice echo off the walls, calling for me, yelling in anger, laughing at some joke I didn't understand. At dinner, I sometimes caught myself setting an extra plate before realizing he wasn't coming back. I started wondering if I was going mad, if the slow unraveling of my mind was the punishment I had earned. My reflection mocked me from the mirror, the sagging skin, the hollowed eyes, the mouth set in a line of permanent grief. This wasn't the man I remembered building. This was someone else. Wealth had been a double-edged sword. A blessing, sure, in the way a sword gleams in the light, but it cuts. And I had been too arrogant to realize how deep the blade had gone, how much damage I'd inflicted without even knowing. And then the darker thought came. Crawled up from the basement of my mind, whispering in a voice that was unmistakably mine. Did you ever truly love him, or did you only love the idea of him? The heir, the golden boy, the extension of yourself. That thought nearly broke me. How do you live with yourself when you're no longer sure if the love you claim to have was ever real? Have you ever faced a truth so dark about yourself that it made you question who you really are? Every night after the world quieted, I sat at my old mahogany desk, the one I'd bought when the company first turned a profit. It still smelled faintly of varnish and cigars, a relic from another life, another man. I kept the room dim, the only light a small brass lamp casting a sickly yellow pool onto the blank page in front of me. That's when I began writing to him. Letters I never intended to send. The first one started awkward, the pen shaking in my hand. "Dear David," I wrote, and just seeing his name on paper made my throat tighten. My son, my betrayer, my boy. I wrote about his childhood, things I never said when it mattered, how proud I was when he hit his first home run, how I kept the photo of him grinning in his Little League uniform tucked in my wallet for years, though I never showed anyone. I confessed the way I used to stand outside his bedroom door after coming home late, listening to the soft rhythm of his breathing, aching to go in but afraid I'd wake him. I admitted things I'd never told anyone. My fear of weakness, the terror of losing control. How fatherhood felt like standing on the edge of a cliff, pretending you weren't afraid of the drop. I told him about the time I found his first drawing in my office, A crude, wobbly picture of the two of us, stick figures holding hands. And how I smiled all day, tucking it into my briefcase like it was a stock certificate. I wrote until my fingers cramped, pouring out years of regret onto the page. The missed birthdays, the forgotten promises, the way I'd chosen board meetings over soccer games, dinners over bedtime stories. "I'm sorry," I wrote over and over, but it never felt enough, and every morning, like clockwork, I folded the letter carefully and locked it away in the bottom drawer. I told myself I couldn't send it, that reaching out would only reopen the wound, that silence was cleaner, safer. But the truth was uglier. I was afraid he wouldn't answer, afraid he would. My pride and my shame tangled inside me like barbed wire, cutting deeper every day. I would sit by the phone at night, fingers drumming the table, willing it to ring. Just once, just a sign that he still thought of me. But the line stayed cold, dead, silent. Sometimes I'd imagine him reading the letters, laughing, maybe, shaking his head, or maybe he'd cry, the way I sometimes did in the dark when no one was there to see. Other times I convinced myself he wouldn't care, that the man I'd raised had long ago stopped needing anything from me. Each night ended the same, me staring at the stack of unsent letters, wondering if I was protecting myself or punishing myself. Have you ever held back an apology out of fear and wondered if it cost you everything? Months had blurred into a shapeless ache, each day folding into the next with the color drained out. I had almost stopped waiting, almost, when the message came. He wanted to meet. The words were simple, but they hit me like a brick to the chest. My heart thrashed wildly, caught between a desperate, pathetic hope and the raw dread of reopening wounds that had only just started to scab over. We chose a quiet place, neutral ground, the kind of restaurant with soft lighting and too much space between tables. When I walked in, I saw him instantly. He was older, somehow, though only months had passed. Or maybe it was just that I was seeing him clearly for the first time in years. He had my eyes. That realization hit hard. Same dark ringed irises, same tired glint, the same flicker of something fierce buried under layers of exhaustion. I sat down across from him, and for a moment, neither of us spoke. The weight between us was palpable, like we were each holding the ends of a frayed rope, unsure if we should pull or let go. He broke the silence first. His voice was clipped, tight, rehearsed. I did what I had to do. I wanted to snap back, wanted to lash out and tell him what he'd done to me, but the words caught. Instead, I just listened. His hands fidgeted, eyes darting away as he explained, not in detail, not with apologies, but with a kind of raw necessity. He hadn't come to say sorry. He'd come because he wanted me to understand. I felt the air shift inside me. For so long, I had rehearsed this meeting in my head. The shouting, the accusations, the angry tears. But here, now, none of that seemed to matter. The room felt too fragile, too human for rage. "I love you," I said. The words felt foreign, like they'd been buried in a drawer too long and came out dusty, half-formed. My throat tightened as I spoke, and I hated myself a little for how hard it was to say. He didn't say it back. I didn't expect him to. But for a split second, his shoulders dropped, his jaw loosened. His eyes, my eyes, softened just enough to let something real slip through. We sat like that for a long time. Two men, bound by blood and shattered trust, sitting across from each other as if trying to memorize the lines on each other's faces. We weren't going to fix anything tonight. Maybe not ever. But something shifted in that silence, a tiny crack where light could seep in. As I left the restaurant, I felt something unfamiliar stirring in my chest. Not quite peace, not quite forgiveness, but maybe the faintest glimmer of beginning. A thread, thin and trembling, but there. Have you ever tried to rebuild something after it's been shattered? How do you even know where to start? Alone again. The balcony rail was cold under my hands, the metal biting into my palms like punishment. Below, the city pulsed, a sprawl of glittering windows and taillights, flickering like dying stars straining to hold on. I used to look at this view and feel like a king. Tonight, I felt like a ghost. I thought about legacy, not the company, not the headlines, not the awards or the deals or the bank account numbers that had once felt so permanent, so vital. No, legacy wasn't any of that. It was the late-night stories I never read to him, the scraped knees I didn't bandage, the quiet cries in his childhood room that I drowned out with ringing phones and urgent emails. How do you come back from that? Redemption isn't some grand sweeping gesture. It's not a public apology or a donation or a PR campaign. It's the long, slow crawl through the muck of your own failures. It's a lifetime of small, painful choices. Showing up, even when it hurts. Listening, even when the words cut. Saying, "I was wrong," without wrapping it in an excuse. I still don't know if my son and I will ever fully reconcile. We had coffee last week. It was stiff, awkward, full of silences that hung heavy between us. We talked about surface things, how he's doing, how the company transition is going. We didn't touch the deep wounds, not yet, maybe not ever. But there was one moment, just one, where his eyes softened. When I admitted, quietly, "I think I failed you as a father." He didn't agree. He didn't disagree. He just looked down at his hands, and for the first time I saw the boy inside the man. And for the first time, I let myself be the man inside the father, stripped of the armor, the ego, the power. Just a flawed, hurting, trying human being. And maybe, just maybe, that's enough. I stood there on the balcony, the wind pulling at my sleeves, and I knew, I am more than my fortune. I am more than my failures. I am more than the empire I built or the empire I lost. I am a man who still has a chance, however small, to love better, to be better, to stop running from the hardest parts and finally face them. If you've ever stood at the edge of loss, wondering if it's too late, wondering if the bridge has already burned to ash, I want you to know you're not alone. I see you. I am you. And there is still time, as long as you're willing to bleed a little to make it right. Please, like this video, share your own story in the comments, and subscribe to the channel. Let's walk through this messy, painful human journey together. Because even in the darkest moments, even when you can't see the way forward, there's always a chance for light.